Hey Google, connect to my Macintosh.
Got it. Looking for paired devices. Bluetooth is connected to McCann Foothill 545.
Hey, good morning, and welcome to class. We'll give other people a chance to join too, and so let's hang in there for a little while. Maybe we'll start in 5 minutes. And in the meanwhile, before we start talking, you guys can just carry on a conversation with yourselves, which is, usually this is what we do in my CS2A classes during the regular quarter. We start on time, and then usually there's a few people that come a little late, and so we give them about 5 minutes or so, and during which time you guys are just talking. Essentially, most of this class, since this is an informal class, it's not what's the best way to say it? I think we're not allowed to have mandatory classes in an online section, meaning that we can't force you to attend classes, which is a pity. But that also comes with some advantages, because that means this is a purely optional class, and you guys are here of your own volition and trying to learn things and so on. So we don't have to follow the syllabus to the T, which you will be doing anyway. As you course through the course, you're going to be following all the, dotting all the I's and crossing the T's. And so what we will do in here essentially is catch up, where we'll have a chance every week to get together like this, and then you will all have a chance to talk to each other. And I'll go into a little more detail of how we can do that in a way that will actually be beneficial to all students, and also to yourself in the process of engaging in these useful and interesting conversations online. Maybe that is that 5-minute discussion that you have is actually a very worthwhile video clip to share, right? Because as you will find out very soon, there will be lots of concepts in computer science that will not be immediately obvious to understand from the textbook or from other, or the modules and things like that. You will most likely have to go hunting for information on the net, and you will come across tons and tons of sources, Stack Overflow, Geek Exchange, or all these other places where you'll find a lot of information. And one of the things that some of the students have found is that a lot of information they find is often too complex, or they want to know about some part of some procedure, but the information they locate online will probably be about something else, where this is just a byline, and so it's all hard. And so but with the advent of technology like TikTok and YouTube clips and so on, I think it'll be super duper useful, even if you don't manage to talk the entire way of this duration of this meeting. Even if you say something interesting for 2 minutes or 1 minute during these meetings, you can take a clip. You can take a clip of the YouTube video and you can share it. And who knows, right? Because there are thousands and thousands of students like you who are scouring the net to find interesting discussions, especially by other students. Yeah, and this is a point I made to my CS2A students also repeatedly. I think, this is my hypothesis, students tend to place greater weight on information shared by other students rather than from teachers or professors or textbooks or other online sources. I think the reason behind this is not that the authoritative sources are less accurate, It's just that I think it is the mentality, it is the psychology of the student, and this is how I was also. I always assume that the heavyweight textbooks will go into a certain level of detail that will be too much for me at that time to understand. And so I tend to look at the more authoritative sources with less of an expectation that I'm going to assimilate all of it. And I will usually go, hunting for certain pieces in the big paper that describe what it is that I want to learn. And a great deal of my time is just spent in hunting. Whereas if it was a student paper or a student discussion, even if it was, a 20-minute discussion on YouTube or a paper that is 5 pages long, I approach it with a completely different mentality. I say that, well, they're just students like me. So obviously they can't say anything that I can't understand. So I'm just going to, bite into it with full force. And if I don't understand something, I'll just go back and read it because, obviously, I should have done it. So, and that mindset change, right? That mindset change makes a huge difference. I find in my own learning, that mindset makes a huge difference. Whether you approach a task saying, it's possible, I can do it. Or, well, I don't know if it's possible. Let me find out if it's possible based on what other people have told me. That is, 20%, that's you're operating on 20% of your engines at that point, okay? Because 80% is now spent, 80% of your cycles are spent in just seeking validation for what we know, right? Most young people, even my kids, they spend a lot of time just seeking outside validation when the real strength of their knowledge is inside them. They just need to look inside, just know that they know the stuff, right? So we shouldn't be looking at me or anyone else, your classmates or any source on the online to say, well, what you did is correct, you deserve full marks for that. No, that is a piece of nonsense, right? And the grade you get out of this class is a piece of nonsense, really. And 10 years, you're not going to remember this, but you will remember all the concepts you learned. Right? And so if you didn't learn any concepts and you only picked up a piece of paper, that is totally worthless. That's like all your money spent on a trip to Foothill College in the summer of 2022, right? Whereas if you said, well, you know what, I'm not really going to have that experience and get a piece of paper, but I'm going to go and learn something, then once you learn it, then you are free to completely forget about this experience. You don't have to remember that it was this class you learned it in, or which, it'll just be there. It's part of your life from that point onwards. And that is why I think that the mindset is the most important. If you, I don't know how we started talking about the other thing, but certainly the mindset with which you approach it, I think it is more like what is this, the Dweck paper, or the Carol Dweck, was it? She was at Stanford. She wrote this book, some papers and a book based on the different mindsets. I don't know. I think she called it, one of them was called the growth mindset and the other one was called something else. The growth mindset basically says, well, I don't know it, but I'm going to find out anyway because it's possible. I can learn it. Whereas the other mindset, I don't know what that one is called. Yeah. I think the other one mindset, which unfortunately, I think, in my opinion, I may be wrong, is more prevalent in the Bay Area of in Silicon Valley anyway, is really the conquest mindset, which in which case, in which the students are not really there to learn or improve themselves, but they just want a qualification to move them on to the next step so that they get one more qualification under their belt. Or they got an A here, they can move on to the next class, or they get admitted to a college that they want. Even then, they want to go to the college not to learn. They want to go to a high-profile college because it'll give them a high-profile job after that. So, and what are they doing the high-profile job for, right? They're not doing a high-profile job to have a great time enjoying what they do. They just want to make a lot of money and gain power and fame and glory. At the end of the day, most people will find that's all useless, right? None of it is going to come in, help us at a time of need, whereas knowledge always helps us in a time of need. And that is why I feel that this mindset is so damn important when we come to learning, especially computer science, because people are, there's a lot of misconceptions about computer science in the Bay Area. Because as you know, I think. I'm just going to keep waffling like this until more students turn up, or if it's 5 more minutes, okay? And then you can just say, okay, well, nobody's turning up. Let's just start, okay? And then we can start. But until then, just call. What time is it now? All right, 5 minutes. In the Bay Area, I think the issue is that computer programming, because it's a relatively new field, meaning 100 years or so, all right? It's a relatively new field. There are a lot of, anything that you start learning, you will find, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I've found in every single thing that I've tried to learn in my whole life, okay? Anything I start is like super duper easy for the first 10%. Okay, because the first 10% is really easy. You go to ceramics and play around with clay. Yeah, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. But or anything. Initially, it is easy because it's all low-hanging fruit. Any garden you go into, you can get all the low-hanging fruit easily. Okay, so given that that is how things happen in learning, I think it would be wise to not calibrate our expertise after having plucked all the low-hanging fruit. But what happens is that because during the early stages of learning, everything comes so easily, because everything is low-hanging, right? Everything comes so easily, students have a very high chance of miscalibrating themselves and thinking that they are experts, when actually they're not. But they're on the way to becoming experts. Because once you pick up all the low-hanging fruit, you are on the way to becoming an expert. You can never become an expert before getting all the low-hanging fruit. But if we calibrate ourselves and saying, oh, that's all there is to it, I am an expert, then it sets us up for downstream failure, right? Because what happens is that when a field is young, there are lots of things that are usually only done by experts that will start filtering down to the people who need to learn it. Like mathematics, right? Take the concepts of zero and addition and subtraction, multiplication. There are algorithms that are taught in school, right? Kindergarten teachers teach us these things. But some of these are algorithms, right? So carry and borrow, that's an algorithm. It's not immediately obvious how it works. Whereas, when my daughter went to elementary school here, there was this movement. And I could see that happen right in front of my eyes. They said, we're not going to teach math the traditional way by teaching algorithms for performing operations, because these little kids, they don't understand how the carry comes mysteriously from this number to that, and borrows. Those are all mysterious to kids. So we'll teach them just the concepts and saying, if you want to add this to this, you can do it this way, and move all the thousands first and move the hundreds next, and so on and so on. So the kids get grounded in the concepts, and then the algorithm comes naturally after that. So that was another way of teaching, which at least in the school that I'm familiar with, they found great success. That the children initially appear to be learning slowly because they're learning the concepts and not mastering all the sums and problems that you have to get through 100 sums in 10 minutes and get an A for it. They can't do that because they're still mastering concepts. But once the concepts have been drilled and settled properly, take the same set of students again, but these students who master the concepts can blindingly, fast, they sail through complex problems. Whereas these other ones who mastered the techniques and not the concepts, they'll have a harder time when it comes to, when push comes to shove, the harder problems are actually faced in real life. And how did we get started talking about that? Yeah. So computer science too. Basic computer science is actually very simple. Everyone does that. Even a child, very young child, when you see them do some very simple task without being taught that, and they will automatically take some kind of an iterative approach to solving that, right? So there's a piece of candy there, I'm here, I need to get it. How do I do it? So I'm going to do this iterative approach of taking steps one after another until I reach the candy. When I'm near the candy, I can grab it. Yes, it's an algorithmic approach to solving a problem. So everybody knows that. It's only that with computer science, we say the same approach can be brought. So it's not something new you have to learn. It's the same thing. Yeah, you can do that by just taking data, numbers, and taking numbers and performing a series of repetitive steps for which you don't have to engage your mind. That is the key concept in computer science. Okay, the key concept in computer science, the key concept in all of science, really, all of science as we know it today, is discovering predictability, discovering predictability so that we can make things predictable and not have to do anything, right? Because we can now automate everything around us and we can just sit down and close our eyes and be peaceful and happy, right? That is the goal of science. Although many people, just don't see it, and they just keep running and saying that is the science is in the race. No, science is not in the race. Science is in getting the race to an end so that we can sit down and automate everything around us, because we need predictability. As humans, we don't like uncertainty, right? Even if it's a date, right? Even if it's something that we need to do that is not connected to anything at all, right? We want certainty. We make phone calls and say, "Are you sure you want to come? Are you sure?" Right? We want this because we don't want disappointment, because uncertainty causes disappointment. Yes, because uncertainty means we approach something, we don't know if it's going to work or not. We hope that it's going to work. We don't know it's going to work. And if it doesn't work, we're going to be disappointed because we hoped. And that is bad. And that leaves a bad taste in our mouth. And so as humans, we don't like disappointments, and we will do everything in our power to avoid disappointments. And science is just a way of avoiding disappointments by looking at nature repeatedly and saying, well, you know what, all these things, they're not just random, they're happening according to some pattern. Okay, an apple, if you drop it, it's always going to go down, right? And so on and so forth. And we tend to look at these patterns and say, how many of these patterns just happen without me being involved? Okay, if it's something that can happen without me being involved, I can basically just string them together and have a bunch of those do something more sophisticated without me being involved, right? That is, in fact, in mathematics, as some of you who are learning mathematics, that's calculus, isn't it? Calculus is the word calculus, it comes from pebbles, right? In calculi, in Latin, I believe, pebbles, right? Or in China, they use these beads on an abacus, right? So pebbles, and it comes from pebbles because you can perform apparently sophisticated and complex operations just by moving pebbles around. How cool is that? Okay, what that means is that in order to do calculus, you don't need a brain. Now, that shouldn't sound disparaging, because it's not. You actually need a great deal of intelligence in order to do calculus, because the calculus is a process of taking the intelligence inside our brain and extracting it and putting it inside a procedure that does not require a human brain anymore, right? So that you can take that procedure and give it to someone else and say, now use that procedure, you'll get the result without me having to come there and teach you how to do it. Does that make sense? Right? Because if you take a parabola and you want to calculate the slope, without calculus, it's harder, isn't it? Because you actually need to go and measure and things like that and so on. And say, well, this is what the slope is, and this is how you calculate it. But y equals x squared is, the slope is 2x. And in extracting that piece of knowledge from your head, saying that the slope is always 2x in the x squared parabola, you have essentially, that is calculus, right? You have distilled it out, and you can now give it to someone else and say, you have a parabola and you want to calculate the slope, you don't have to call me, just take 2x and that's your slope. So calculus is a process of moving pebbles around to get solutions to apparently complex problems, which hitherto people had thought required human intelligence to solve. And so gradually, what we do is, in the process of becoming more and more human, we are extracting more and more of our human intelligence and putting it outside of our brain so that we can be human, and the intelligence, which is really, a bummer rote work, at the end of the day, that can be done by someone else. And so we get to be excellent managers of ourselves. Forget about managing other people, right? So we get to be excellent managers of ourselves. And so computer science essentially is saying, what can I do? So there are so many things that need to be done. Do I actually need a human manager out there, right? Saying, hey, you do that. All right, you go and do that and come back and report to me. You finish this task, and then I'll put it all together, and then we'll get the final product. That is the traditional management way of doing things. Yes. But with calculus, with a computer, with a program, with an automatic procedure, you can say, well, you know what? In order for this to get done, A, B, C, D, and E, each should get done. We'll break it up. A is relatively easy to do without me having to be there. So, it's just a bunch of blocks, and this robot can do it. That robot can do this. All of this comes together, and the final robot will put things together. So I don't have to be around. I'll just enjoy the fruits of the labor, not have to do any of the labor. That is what computer science is. And where I was going with that was that because computer science is relatively new, a lot of the really basic steps in computer science, basic steps meaning how do you come, basically CS2A is basic steps, okay? All of CS2A will teach you everything that is required as basic steps in computer science. In 2B and 2C, you're going to take these steps and see what you can build out of these steps to bigger and bigger things and really cool things in CS2C. So these basic steps in CS2A, I think because they are not taught, that's the reason, okay? Because computer science is relatively new, these basic steps have not gone all the way down to kindergarten, which happened in mathematics. If you go back to ancient India and China and so on, I'm pretty sure everybody at home didn't know mathematics, right? Only some elite few in institutions knew how to do these complex mathematical operations, like zero and what the concept of zero and negative numbers and so on and so forth. And I don't know if ordinary people knew that, but after thousands of years of using these things, it'll filter down, right? And say, well, it is so important now that even kindergartners need to know it. That's why we teach these techniques in kindergarten. And that is why when someone has mastered, basic numbers, arithmetic, multiplying, division, subtraction, and addition, they can't call themselves yet as master mathematicians, right? Because they know the basic steps of math, but they don't know real math, the real reasoning behind all the things that you can do with it. And that is where the computer science, unfortunately, is in a state where the basic steps have now been passed on from the experts to learners in colleges and universities, but it has not yet filtered down all the way to kindergarten, which it should happen, right? It should happen in the next several decades. Kids in kindergarten will be using computers and also be thinking about computational steps. They'll be thinking about problems in a computational way, because computational thinking is a different kind of thinking. Although children are used to it and they do it all the time, but formalizing it and saying, well, I can do this in many different ways, not just this particular way. That formal computational thinking is slightly different that most people don't, because in mathematical proofs, I don't know if I can talk about, so mathematical proofs are called analytical proofs. Analytical proof meaning you start from here, the left hand side, and you do a bunch of transformations and you end up on the right hand side. Okay, so you get and this is no other way. You just go from here to there, bam, like that, and it's a proof. Whereas in a computational way of solving a problem, you say there are some problems for which you don't have an analytical solution. You cannot find an analytical solution, or it's really, really hard, or it's not tractable. Not tractable meaning, well, it's technically possible, but we don't have the computational power in the whole of the earth today, whole world. There's no computational power that can solve this particular problem, right? Well, forget about quantum and things like that. Even if quantum is, right? So so but the insight there is that there is a way in which those problems can also be solved, and they can be solved incrementally. Just like a kid would go to the candy saying, well, you know what, I'm going to take one step in the direction of the candy. I don't have the candy yet, but I'm closer to the candy. Yes, right? Now I can repeat that n times, right? Many times. Each time I'm getting closer and closer to the candy, and finally I'll have the candy. Right? So that is an incremental approach to solving the problem. That incremental approach, that is basically the iterative approach. It is the heart of computer science, and the fact that something can be solved incrementally without you having to be mentally present, right? But that kind of thinking to solve a problem that does not intuitively jump into our heads without practice, right? Without practice, I'm pretty sure it'll jump into a kid's head, right? But after the children have been in society where that kind of thinking is not very common in everyday life, it'll slowly start getting more and more backgrounded, and eventually the child actually forgets that they can do these things. But this incremental way of solving things, we bring it back to the fore and say, well, computer science is that incremental way of solving things, and we will get a lot of problems in which the solution cannot be found mathematically in one step, but you can get it in multiple steps by doing the same thing over and over again with minor changes here and there. Everything automatic, right? And that's all there is to it. Just like walking to a piece of candy and picking it up. And that kind of thinking will become entrenched in young brains as soon as they are in kindergarten. And the reason I brought that up was because in the Bay Area, a lot of students, maybe I shouldn't say a lot, a significant number of students have mastered the basics, meaning the addition and subtraction of computer science, which is really 2A, all of the 2A material. Well, not even all of the 2A, maybe they can do all of the 2A, right? Just the first few. And that because their immediate neighborhood, right? Maybe their relatives, close friends, or even the social circle they're in, they're not personally aware of the challenges in solving larger problems. They may think that this is actually a fantastic thing, and they may drill wrong notions into the head of this person, saying, "Wow, you are born to be a computer scientist. That is already a computer science thing. You are a great computer scientist," and things like that. That basically stifles the growth mindset, and saying, it says, "I'm already good in computer science. There's nothing more for me to learn." And that kind of attitude is a sure way to fail in computer science courses. Any course, really, right? Any course, if you go in and say, "Oh, hey, prof, if I go to ceramics and tell Andy, I already know how to do ceramics. Just teach me how to do this really complicated piece here." Okay. He's going to say, "Well, okay, I'll teach you to do that, but that is made up of, three spherical parts and a spout and things like that. Do those first." I'll say, no, I don't want to do those. I only want to do the complex piece, right? Because that is total nonsense, isn't it? That won't work in computer science also. And so a lot of students mistakenly come with the assumption that they already know computer science, and they just want to pick up a piece of paper or just go on to the next level course, and this is clearance for them. But that is not the right approach to take with computer science. So that's what it is. And I think it's 1:27 now. We can start. I don't think anybody else is coming today. Hey, Emily, you can also post again in the Reddit or reach out to your classmates and say these discussions, maybe not today, from today onwards, you only have 5 of these totally, right? After today, it's only 4. In fact, I don't even know if we're allowed to have well, we can have a meeting on week 6 too, because it's all informal. But technically, there's only 5 meetings left. And these meetings are going to be useful, super duper useful, because this is the place where students will come and talk about challenges with each other, no matter, right? In the past, we've had students who are talking about question number 9 at the same time as someone else is talking about question number 3 or 4, right? And there's no value judgments here. They're not saying, "Oh, that person already is at question number 9. They must know a lot more, and I'm differential to them. Whatever they say is right." None of that shit happens in my class. Right. So this Quest 9 person will come and say, by the way, no sharing of Quest code, no sharing of explicit Quest code in these Zoom meetings, and also outside in the STEM center or even via email between students. And you can ask your parents or friends or brothers and sisters, "Hey, what's going on here?" All of that is expressly forbidden in this class. But here, the students come and say, "Well, you know what? I'm trying to do this where I have, well, let's pick something. Oh, yeah, let's take binary search, okay? Yeah, I'm trying to do binary search, and I'm trying to, and this is the procedure I'm using, right? I'm looking here, and then I'm looking here, and looking here. What's going on, right? And you can do all that without having to show your code. You can basically, if you have, especially if you have an iPad, you don't even need an iPad, right? On a shared screen in Canvas, you can say, "Well, this is my search. This is my array of numbers." You can draw a rectangle. Here's where I'm trying to search. In my binary search, I'm doing this, and I'm moving here, and so on. You can do all that pictorially, verbally, exchanging words without having to show code. And when you do that, you'll find that those videos will actually even be super duper valuable for other people, because it's not just restricted to our Quest code, which is just CS2 in my classes, right? Because you'll be talking about a concept and not a Quest code. Now, if you're talking about a concept without referring to Quest code, that is instantly relevant to millions of students around the world, right? Because someone maybe in the middle of Germany, right? They're trying to learn binary search. They go, there's tons and tons of resources online. You use binary search, you'll have a hard time just going through the first 5 pages of the Google search results. But at the same time, if you have a bullet, a 5-second clip, students talking about binary search and some gotchas there, someone might actually find it and recommend it to someone else, right? And these recommendations all factor into Google and Microsoft's ranking algorithms, right? You only need 5 or 6 recommendations before it starts bubbling up. And your 5-minute clip where you're talking about binary search and some insights and intuitions about it might actually become viral. Who knows, right? Even mindless TikTok videos are getting going viral. So there's no reason something that actually is valuable and useful and also interesting shouldn't go viral. So these are all interesting opportunities for you. That's where we'll go. Today, obviously, you can just talk about data representation because that is obviously a very key part of computer science. And so and also the many students who are racing forward, right, saying I just need to get all this done and ignore data representation because it's just a quiz. They will suffer downstream because there are lots of problems in 2B and 2C where a really solid knowledge of data representation is required. Whether a data type is 2 bytes or 4 bytes, or whether it's signed or unsigned, all of those matter, right? In fact, if you go to the subreddit and look for some of the later quests, right, in 2B and 2C and say, well, I have this program, it's not even terminating, right? And the quest site is always timing out and saying you got killed because you're too slow and things like that. You'll see people respond to those posts and say, hey, you know what, same thing happened to me. It was because I used an signed data type instead of an unsigned data type, right? And if you don't know data representation, that is basically going to throw you off the floor completely, right? Because, you know, how do you know? How can we tell? Why is this loop terminating if I use a signed data type and not an unsigned data type? Right? So how do you know that? You will know that even before that person gave you the answer with just a little hint saying, hey, it's a data types, instantly you know, oh, I must have used unsigned there instead of signed, right? Because you know about data representation. So data representation is hugely important. And the 18 pages that I wrote a long time ago in the module 0, I think have been condensed down as much as possible. So it's actually very information rich as well as interesting, hopefully, to read. Please do read it. I think so far I've done a reasonably, I think it's probably a better job than I've seen in most other textbooks and other treatments of data representation. And for the reason that most of the textbooks that teach and talk about data representation, they're just talking about it in the first 10 pages because they're talking about something else that is much bigger. They're talking about C++ or Java, and you have 1 page, 10 pages in the beginning to do data representation. And in the classes, most of the teachers and professors don't start with data representation. They start with the, hello world, the first program. And so most students don't even look at the data representation part. So I find that treatments of data representation in textbooks is not as exhaustive or interesting, or the author hasn't put in as much work into that part as talking about the programming downstream, problems. And so that's why I think that our module 0, I think, is relatively easier to follow and because when I wrote that, I wasn't thinking about programming, right? I was only thinking about data representation because that was the goal. So please do that. Convert your names to hexadecimal and post it. I think some of you have already done that. And see if you can get a pronounceable hexadecimal name, at least in leet speak, okay? And that'll be really cool. And share that. And then very soon after that, you're going to be starting to work on the quests and talking about C++ programs that don't work. And by the way, as far as the very first quest goes, quest number 1, that is a tiger named Fangs, that quest you can feel free to share the source code and also the password, because if someone another classmate has a problem with the first quest, you can actually have in this meeting, you can say, hey, let me share my screen. I'll show you what I did, right? So you can say, here's my browser, and I'm going to go to the Quest website on Safari. Okay, I'm going to drag this hello world.cpp file and put it in a circle and then click it. All right, and then when the result comes back, I hear a ting or I see some visual indication. I click that, I can see the results, and that's my trophies, right? So you can actually show that demo to your fellow classmate too, and that might be useful. But from the next quest onwards, especially since you can't share these screens because the password will be there too for the next quest. So don't share the passwords and screens, but just share the concepts and discuss these concepts. It will be great fun. Okay, and along the way, if you guys are interested, we'll see how it goes. We can pick up some interesting projects. Okay, we can pick up some interesting projects. Maitri said, I'm only now looking at the chat. And by the way, chat is not a good way to communicate during our classes, mainly because me and also some of the other students, they have only a laptop, not multiple screens, and then that's chat takes up real estate on the screen, right? So everybody has that minimized. So so just speak up, okay? Just raise your hand or say, hey, Anand, I want to say something. Perfectly fine. I don't care about being cut off. Okay.
One sec. Question. Yeah, so I was a bit confused. This isn't directly about like principles or anything. Because on one of the announcements it said that you have to finish the 9 blue and then green one was due by
No, no,
Sunday.
no, 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 no.
No.
This is CS2A, isn't it? Not CS2B. Are you in CS2A or 2B?
But there was an announcement that said
Wow, I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me know. That was meant for CS2B, which means that those guys didn't get the announcement. Okay, they should have got it. They didn't get it. Okay, now, you don't have to do any green. Okay, unless you want to. There's nothing stopping you from going all the way to red. If you have, if you have time, because I'm not going to say if you have the chops or the expertise or intelligence, because I know every one of you has that. It is just the time. If you can make the time and have the commitment, you can go all the way to red. Okay,
so
and I can tell you as a benchmark, the fastest anyone so far has completed all 27 quests is 3 months. Okay, 3 months, 12 weeks, 12 weeks. But you shouldn't do that. Okay, that person, he probably already knew a whole lot of stuff, and then he just wanted to do the red, so he just screen passed. And so you shouldn't do that. But only less than 1% of all the students I've had since I started questing in 2019, right? I made the questing system in 2019. Fall 2019 was my first class that used questing. So I've been offering questing ever since then. Only less than 1% of all the students I've had in the C++ track have started in CS2A, did my CS2B and the green quests, and also did my CS2C and the red quests, and reached the red 9 quest. Okay, reaching the red 9 quest basically means you're pretty much set up, I think, in my opinion, right? That would set you up for real professional programming. Okay, again, you can be a professional programmer if you complete red quest 9, although you don't need to complete it to pass my 2C. For passing CS2C, I've basically said quest number 6 is sufficient. So many people would go to 6 and then do a few more and get some grade between C and A, right? But less than 1% have started blue and gone all the way to red 9. Less than 5% more, right? Less than 5% of my students so far have started in red and gone all the way to red 9. Yeah. Well, started in blue and gone all the way to red 9. Okay, then not 2A and 2B. They just had to do blue quest, green quest, and then do the red quest after having enrolled in CS2C. Less than 5% have done all 27 quests because most of them can get a pass after red 6. So, but I want all of you to be that. All of you to go all the way and complete red quest 9, and then come back and watch these videos in which you were in CS2A, and you can say, hey, that can't be me, right? In fact, I even look different now. That can't be me. That person doesn't know all these basic things, right? So, and it'll be a great deal of fun for you to for you to come back and look at these videos, right? So this is kind of forced journal entry here. All right. So that's all there is. I don't want to take up any more of your time. So if you guys have things to say, the floor is all yours. So go ahead and talk. And then after you're done, what I'll do is I can just turn this laptop around to face outside, and so that I'm not in your face. Okay, and you can have a free-form conversation without me cramping your style with your fellow classmates. Just keep in mind that it'll be recorded, but I can always go back and delete portions of before I post it on YouTube if you get back to me. But most students haven't requested that, right? They're happy to be in a YouTube video talking about technical stuff. So you should take that opportunity, especially considering there's only 5 of these opportunities. Before the meeting itself, think about what you want to talk about so that it'll make for an interesting conversation that you can clip and share on YouTube. Now, maybe the first 3 or 4 meetings, you may not have anything, and even the way you approach these things and how you talk, all of that needs to be refined, just like a talk show, right? So I'm pretty sure talk show hosts didn't do a great talk show on the very first attempt, right? Even the one that is telecast, I'm pretty sure must have been after several rehearsals and after everything has been buttoned down properly. So you may find that the first few discussions you have don't look all that professional. It's okay. Who cares? Okay, but you'll find that they eventually start getting better and better. and maybe at the end of the 10th or 15th discussion you're having, you're actually leading the discussion very nicely and asking interesting questions, right? And that's what makes talk shows popular, right? Talk shows are popular not because they bring interesting people to talk to the host. It's because the host has done a lot of homework before the show started, thinking about what are the interesting questions that the audience will be interested in. So they think about these things. And in the talk show, I haven't watched a talk show for, I don't know, maybe a decade now, but I still remember from, a long time ago. But in the talk show, and I think about what Oprah is doing and things like that, it seems like it's a natural conversation, right? It seems like there's two people having an interesting chat up there. And it's so interesting anyway, I'm going to watch it, right? And I'm not watching the show because she gives away a car or a Porsche or a Ferrari at the end. No, I'm not watching it for that. People are watching it for not the, vicariously enjoying the freebies the guests are getting. They're watching it because the conversation is interesting, but it's not interesting because it's just a conversation. It is because Oprah has spent a lot of time before the show thinking about what are the interesting things that I can bring up, and then that is the skill. That is the skill of the host to unknowingly blend these questions into the normal flow of a conversation. This is what happens also, right? Even if you go on a date, and even if you're talking to a friend or in a bar or something like that, many times interesting conversations and uninteresting conversations, you can tell it's uninteresting because that person is basically just thinking off the top of their head. They haven't given any thought to what they want to do. They're just, talking about whatever comes into their head. That's boring, really. But however, when you talk to interesting people, they have a lot of interesting things they've thought about before, right? They've had lots of interesting thoughts, and they found that, well, that's really interesting. I wonder what other people think about that. Then they'll say, when they have an opportunity to talk with you, they'll somehow, it won't be like contrived, right? Because Oprah doesn't pop her questions in a contrived way. She's just steering the conversation subconsciously. The people don't even realize it's going in the direction of the next question she wants to ask. Yes, but we don't realize that, and that is how you'll see that these things also happen, right? So eventually you'll start steering these conversations to well, you know what? This discussion will be really, really interesting once we start talking about the effect of this variable n, right, or variable x on the overall output, right? If n changes, is the output going to take longer to come out, or is going to be quicker, right? Now, we're not there yet. We're still talking about how to put these statements together. But I'm sure, because of my experience in handling these conversations, technical conversations, and because of the knowledge that I've picked up in CS2A, I'm confident that even though we're not talking about the effect of n, I can gradually push the participants in this conversation in that direction, so that in 10 minutes time, everybody is now asking, now what happens if we change n, right? And that just fell out of the conversation naturally, without you having to pop that when people are not ready for it. So that, it doesn't come instantly, obviously, right? Nothing comes instantly, but it'll have to come through practice, and you can use these as practice, right? These conversations with your classmates, conversations with your parents and relatives, your friends, you can use these conversations as conscious conversations, right? Not just, mouthing off anything that comes into your mind. Conscious conversations will actually improve the quality of your conversations down the line. Even without you making an effort to improve the conversation, just thinking about it. And why does it improve it? I think it's because when you think about something, your brain is, nobody wants to think about uninteresting things. Yes, nobody wants to be bored. So when you're thinking about uninteresting things and you're thinking about it, you're obviously going to think, is it worth thinking about, right? Is there anything at all that's interesting in it? If it's interesting, if there's something, if there's scope for interesting things in it, I'm going to continue thinking about it. And when you're thinking about it, I'm going to tease it out. What is interesting about it, right? You get as close as possible to it. When you're close to it, it's bound to be interesting to other people too, because you're not here, you're saying, hey, there's the Eiffel Tower, watch it. No, you're in Paris saying, hey, there's the Eiffel Tower, watch it. Say, look at it, right? So, so when you're close to the interesting thing, things will be interesting for other people too. And so that's what happens. You say, I can get close to the point that everybody wants to talk about, but nobody's quite yet ready yet, but I know how to get there, right? So that is a skill to cultivate, and it'll be useful not just here for CS2A. It'll be a hugely useful skill even when you go out there, start looking for jobs and interviews and so on. the successful candidates in interviews have thought about the interview before coming to the interview, right? Not saying I'm going to go to the interview and they're going to give me a bunch of problems, they're going to solve it and get the job. No, right? Before going to the interview, they say, well, what is the company doing, right? What kinds of problems do they have? What team am I interviewing with? And what are they likely to get stuck in, right? Now it's possible that I don't know how to solve it. They're getting stuck there, and if I join them, I'm also going to get stuck. But is it interesting or not, right? Do I want to get stuck there because it's interesting? Now, as long as you've thought about it and found it that it's interesting, that's all you need, right? You don't need to find the solution. When you go to an interview, they're not looking for you to say, hey, this is a problem we're having in production, and what is the solution to it, right? If you give me the solution, you're hired. Otherwise, you're fired. Or we're not going to hire you. They don't tell you that. Right? All they're looking for is this person interesting? And do they have interesting things to offer for things that we are finding interesting too? And that's all. And in order to get there, all you need to do is just think about it for maybe a day or a half hour even before going to an interview, saying, is it interesting? What are the interesting things in it? When you find out what's interesting, then no matter what the interview is, people are never taken off guard. Because, think about it. Anyone who interviews you in any company, they're not going to ask you some completely irrelevant thing that is of no use to the company. They're going to ask you something that is of some relevance to the company. Yes. So so obviously, if you've thought about it, you right? Those are interesting things. So it is very likely that in the setting of an interview, that question is something that's related to that is going to come up. And if you have already thought about that, you can yourself steer in that direction. And say, if you're talking about, how to generate a Gaussian, a normal distribution from a uniform distribution, which apparently is not even related to something in computation, right? And that's what they're asking you. And you thought about that before, saying, hey, this is an advertising company, and they're selecting people based on some distribution of numbers, okay? And they're assuming a normal distribution, the uniform distribution here. But why would it be uniform? Because in the real world, everything is Gaussian, everything is bell-shaped. So maybe if there was maybe I'll go and ask them, right? And then you go and in the interview, they ask you a question. How do you turn a uniform distribution into a normal distribution, right? And that's a question that you'll get asked and that you've thought about before because you are already aware of the domain in which you're going to interview, right? So those are things that you will free up your mental cycles to think about, right? And you can free up your mental cycles just by getting lots and lots of practice doing routine stuff that you don't need to consciously engage your mind in. And the routine stuff, by routine stuff, I just mean getting to know how conversations progress, getting to know, how a technical discussion should happen. All of that is, you don't need to be a technical mastermind to lead a technical discussion. You just need to know how it goes and what people are looking for, so that you can have a bunch of really, really brilliant people and you're just managing them, right? Think about it, right? So if you go to research institutions, sometimes top managers, they're not technical people themselves, but they have a deep respect for the technical people because they know they can do that shit, right? They know, oh my gosh, these guys are doing, kick-ass stuff I can do it myself. But but I know what I want, and those guys can do it. Those guys can do it for me. So if I can describe what I want and basically just nudge them, saying, well, if someone says, if I use this clever solution, you get this, and is that what you want? And you can say, well, you know what, it is what I want, but I think I'd like it better in this way. And think like, so you can have a nice conversation that goes that way, and so you can free up your mental cycles to think more about these things by internalizing many of the rote and normal things that many people spend conscious cycles for. That is a trick, okay? I think that is a trick for people that do great achievements. And many people think, I'm after achievements, I'm going to achieve power and glory and do great things. I'm going to cram and I'm going to do lots and lots of things, work every second of my waking hour, and I sleep only 2 hours a day. That is not the way. That is absolutely not. That is the way to not go and do great things, right? And the way to do great things is basically just to free up your mind and say, all the simple things that can be done. I'm not going to use my brain for that anymore, right? All the simple things like, learning to play a piano, these things take a lot of time. They don't come on day one, right? And it has practice. So even if you play it once correctly, your teacher is not going to be satisfied. You're just going to tell her, go back and do that like 1 million more times and come back and play it tomorrow, right? Because what they want is not for you to consciously say, well, I got a C sharp now, and the next note should be that E flat or whatever it is, right? It's conscious making conscious decisions and making your brain make the decision and filter it down to your hand. Slow, right? How long does a electrical signal take to go from here to there? I don't know, right? Whereas the reflex from your spine to your brain is probably faster, right? So they wanted you to have so much practice that the basic steps are not engaged in your brain, right? The human mind, which is capable of a lot more sophisticated and great things, should be relieved of the responsibility of doing dog work. Right? And the process of practicing something repeatedly is a mark of respect to the human intellect, saying, human intellect, you are so great, you are so fantastic, I want you to just have an incredible experience all the time. I don't want you to suffer. Therefore, I'm going to take away all of the things that could potentially make you do, well, potentially use up your cycles that could be done by something else. I'm going to take it away just by doing that repeatedly again and again, so that it's not part of my waking intelligent cycles anymore. I can just relegate that to my hands. Okay, so my hands go in and type in the template for hello world, bam, 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 like that. I'm saying, talking to my friend. Okay, that kind of thing, and that happens, right? That happens even in CS2C, for example. There may be some algorithms that you consciously code today and spend ages trying to figure out how does it work, how does it work, how does it not crash, right? But in CS2C, they're going to say, well, I'm going to solve this problem. For this, I need that algorithm to work in here. So I'm just going to type that, okay? While I'm talking about this bigger problem with my colleague and saying, hey, I got to do binary search on this tree to get the number. But once I get the number, how do I filter it down into that data structure, right? You're talking to someone else while you're coding binary search, right? And then you just detach yourself for a couple of seconds, check corner cases after that. And all of that will become second nature, right? To you, because it's all rote learning now. And so I think that is the power of rote learning. Yeah, rote learning, meaning some things need to be rote learned and some things should be consciously applied. Initially, you apply your conscious mind, but you have to apply it repeatedly so that it becomes rote. And the greatest risk I've seen in students is that they do manage to get solutions by applying their conscious mind and intelligence. They do get to the solutions, but they make this huge mistake, right? After they've got the solution using their intelligence, they make this huge mistake of saying, I've solved it, now I can move on to the next one, right? Then you forget this. And the longer you go, it's all new again. Never do that mistake. Once you got something down through your intelligence, do it repeatedly, mindlessly, okay? Get it to a place where you can do that mindlessly, because you need your mind to do something else that is even more sophisticated and more complex, right? Because you'll never solve the complex problems if your mind is occupied solving the simpler problems. And once you know how to solve the simple problems, it's best to offload it to, the automata in your body, right? Which are your body is your mind's employee. So your manager, right? The mind says, employee, I need this to get done. Please do that and get back. And so that's where we need to go. And I think you will all reach that very quickly, given the interest with which I've seen some of you participate in the forums and all. It's absolutely fantastic. So keep that up. Encourage everybody to participate. All your classmates. We'll pull people together to do a project at some point. It has to be soon, okay? It's not like a regular quarter where we have 12 weeks. So 6 weeks. So we're going to do some interesting thing. We got to decide on it in week 3 at the very latest. Yeah, and that doesn't have to be part of this meeting. We can set up a separate meeting, maybe a half hour or 1 hour Zoom, 5 times before the end of quarter to go through that project. I can guide you. It'll be you guys doing the project. I'll just be guiding you. Or if you don't want to do that, what you can do is just look at past videos of, from the winter quarter, spring quarter for CS2A. In every one of those videos, every one of my classes, we're invariably working on a small project, right? Just pick up one of those projects and say, for example, in the winter quarter, we were working on a project where, without any fancy graphics at all, just using dumb TTY, right? Ancient terminals, which can only display big block characters. We tried to do some graphics. We tried to draw a stick man and have the stick man race across the screen. And it was actually an interesting thing. A lot of students got interested and, really engaged in it. So we have a bunch of projects like that. We in the previous one before that, I think Turkey, or one of my students who went on to do my 2S2C, he actually passed CS2C just 2 days ago, right? He wasn't 2A. So he and other people, right, coded a way of creating visual effects on a dumb terminal, right? Visual effects where, like a marquee saying happy July 4th, okay? A ribbon that floats across your screen like this, right? At that, we did that in class, just using CS2A. So you can look at the past videos and say, hey, Anand, I don't have any ideas, and we talk to friends, we don't have any new ideas, but we saw an idea in one of the past videos, can we do that? Okay, happy to do that, right? Yeah, in fact, we can even do that in one of these classes. When you guys have run out of discussions to have amongst yourself, they say, well, we don't want to stop the Zoom recording now. Why don't we work on the project? I have time, right? I can guide you just like I guided the 2A students in my face-to-face class. I can guide you where, one of you takes a screen and I would basically walk you through the code, one character at a time, open brace, space, enter, all of those. And you will see in all the videos that you watch, you'll see the student initially great deal of trepidation. And they're saying, oh, curly brace, I have to be super careful, not a parentheses, right? And they do a parentheses and they're embarrassed and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that, and so on and so forth. No need to be embarrassed at all, right? And they do that, and they do that on cue, saying curly brace, and they type it. 5 minutes is all it takes. 5 minutes, watch it, right? 5 minutes. At the end of 5 minutes, they're not waiting for me to say it anymore, right? So I've spoken the letters up to here, but they've already typed up to here, because they know what's going to come, right? And at the next class where they get a second time coding opportunity, they're typing a couple of lines ahead. So by the end, they don't have to wait for me at all. And I think it is hugely fulfilling for the student themselves to watch it, because they see that, what the hell, five minutes ago, I didn't know what to do, and now I'm just doing it by myself. Now, what more confidence booster does a student need than to know that they've actually been able to do it, right? And so those are really cool things. We can do all those things. The sky is the limit. The world is an oyster, as they say, right? There's so many things we can do. Just come up with ideas. Come up with ideas. If it's possible to do in 2A, I'm happy to do it, right? It does not have to be restricted to just the 1 hour Zoom sessions we have. We can set up additional sessions. We can have more people come in too. It'll all be fun. I enjoy this, okay? That's why I'm doing it, right? In fact, that's the reason I have these classes too, because online classes, online sections are not technically supposed to have, face-to-face mandatory, face-to-face is not mandatory, face-to-face lectures, but I have them anyway, because it's fun for me, right? It's fun for me to look at your faces. It's fun for me to watch you code. It's fun for me to work on projects with you like this, right? And it's going to be more fun for me to eventually see you guys in CS2C. and working on the more complex problems, right? And I can tell you, right, CS2C, I'm told, okay, my CS2C section apparently is more challenging than some of the equivalent sections offered at UCs, right? And we've had students who've gone to Ivy League colleges too in classes before, and they've emailed me saying, well, I thought I could ace this, but it's too much for me, but I do want to learn this, and I will come back and re-enroll later. So why would they need to do that right? So people are obviously seeing value in these things. So I think that if you do go on and complete CS2C, you will actually find that it makes a huge difference to your own life too. So anyway, that's all I have to say. If you guys have to say, talk. If you have to ask me anything, feel free to ask. Otherwise, talk amongst yourself. I see that Rupak Sai and Annabella have also joined. Please, hey, and Ping, David, hey, all of a sudden everybody's turning up here. What's going on? Oh, and Kyle.
I think it's because on the subreddit it said 2 p.m., but on the announcement in Canvas it said.
Oh, yeah. That's what you said in the chat. You said that in the chat. Yeah. I read that. I never got to that. And I think Emily pointed that out. Someone pointed it out to me in the announcement. And I changed the announcement, but unfortunately I didn't. Yeah. So I appreciate that people are turning up, which is fantastic. John, oh my gosh, I'm done with my spiel, okay? Because for all of you guys who just joined, first of all, my apologies for the announcement that said 2 p.m. instead of 1 p.m. But we will try and have it at 1 p.m. Because that was the majority vote, if I recollect correctly. So 1 p.m. Will be our meeting time. And also, please review the. Sorry? Someone was saying something. Hey, Roy, Satyam, Rupaksai, Annabella. Yeah, feel free to switch on your cameras, okay? Absolutely, yeah. And it's much better that way. I can guarantee it is a whole lot better. People will, other students are more likely to click on videos with smiling pretty faces rather than all gray rectangles. Okay, so because it's people are talking to each other and they can see that, so it's really cool. So please do keep your cameras on whenever possible. I highly encourage that. It'll also encourage discussion with your fellow classmates. All right, so that's basically all I had to say. And people just joined and I said, that's the end of the class today. No, it's not the end of the class. I just finished a spiel, basically just talking about fluff, which is probably not relevant to CS2A directly, just marginal stuff. So, hey, Jerry, you also feel free to zone and Jerry, please switch on. Yeah, being in a car and all fine, Roy, right? You don't have to switch on your camera in a car, okay? Or look at the screen. You should be looking at the road in front of you, right? So that's that's perfectly fine. But when you're at a terminal, and ideally you're at a terminal also, right? Even if you're at home, I would encourage you not to do these Zoom meetings via iPads or phones. Ideally you're on a computer so that you can also code. Because even though you're not going to be coding Quest code and not sharing Quest code in the Zoom meetings, no sharing of Quest code, okay? You could potentially say, I want to code something today in class. I want to code a linked list. I want to code a stack, or I want to code a binary search, or I want to code a class, or sometimes anything, right? So, and you can say, do some random program. So you can say, I'm going to create an employee manager system, whatever it is, something simple. It shouldn't be really complex, something you can do in an hour and say, I want to do this, which uses this particular skill, how to traverse an array, right? Or how to find the minimum and maximum numbers in an array of numbers. I give you an array of numbers and you just have to find the minimum, maximum, mean, mode, average, all these things. It's simple things. So I want to do this. Can we do this, guys? And you say, yes, let's do it. And one of you takes a screen and you start coding, and other people will, basically guide you and say, hey, there's a typo. No, that should be a closing brace. No, and so on. People can guide you, and that would happen on screen. And then you can say, okay, well, I've got the mean. Now someone else can take over and find the minimum or maximum. So you can all take turns and share the shared, share your screens and do these each of these things. Live coding. Okay, live coding is actually hugely useful. It also, and the other thing that live coding is useful for is it also sets you up, gives you some preliminary it's practice. It is practice for a real interview, because in an interview, in a technical interview, you're going to have to live code. Yes, I don't know, you guys haven't been to interviews or conducted interviews, but if you go to a technical interview in any self-respecting software company, they're going to ask you to code on the whiteboard. And if you've never coded live before, that can be intimidating. And the reason it's bad when it's intimidating is that when you're solving a problem, you need to be thinking about the problem. Okay, and most of the time, people I have interviewed, I mean, the unsuccessful people that don't do well in interviews are not unsuccessful because they couldn't solve the problem. I find many times is that they're unsuccessful because they're not trying to solve the problem. If they tried to solve the problem, I'm pretty sure they could. Instead of trying to solve the problem, they are trying to impress me, or they're trying to validate themselves, or they're trying to find out some useless marginal stuff that is not really relevant to the problem, right? And they're jittery, and they're thinking, 90% of their brain is thinking, oh my gosh, what happens if I fumble here? What are they going to think, right? However, the right way to do it is to fumble. And so you say, don't think about what that person is going to think. What it does not matter. At the end of the day, it does not matter what people think about you. right? What matters is what you know. And so if you think about what the interviewer is thinking about you, or whether you're going to get the job, or whether, all of that will take your cycles away. And whereas if you just say, I don't care about any of that stuff, right? I've come here, I don't care if I don't get the job. I've got 1 hour, right, of a paid entertainment time, like I go to a movie, right? 1 hour of time where I can talk about something interesting, or come across some interesting problem that I can talk with someone who knows about this thing, right? I just have a free form conversation, diving into the technical details as much as possible, and also coding because you're comfortable coding. If you're not comfortable coding, you're not going to be coding, right? Because if you're not comfortable coding and you code, then you're, only 50% of your brain is coding. The other 50% is not comfortable. You're thinking, oh, what are they going to think if I'm doing this here? Okay, that is not a recipe for success. So but on the other hand, if you do that repeatedly, live coding repeatedly in class, in front of other people, right? All of these things, when you go to an interview, it is that is just a skill, like breathing. You're not thinking about breathing when you breathe, you're going to do it, right? So when you're talking to this person and say, well, how would you find the link from that goes from here to there, and you can say, well, I would do that, hang on, let's just do it on a whiteboard with some code, okay, and see if it works. That's what they're looking for. Okay, they're looking for you to jump on the whiteboard and say, I'm not afraid of doing this because I do this every day. This is my bread and butter. I can code anytime at the drop of a hat, right? I can do this, and this is an interesting problem. Let's take a look at this together, right? Now, if you do that, and if you're able to, match the conversation with, properly chosen things, right? You don't have not worrying about it, but basically thinking about what the person said, and then saying, yes, okay, that's what it is, but that won't work if I did that. And you ask them, right? That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for you to solve the problem. They're looking for you to come back with interesting questions and saying, well, this is, am I thinking right? Nobody wants, if you think about it, if you're going to employ someone, right? If you're going to employ someone, not a contractor, that's the difference between employing a contractor and an employee. If you're going to work as a contractor, you just need to know solutions, right? Because, you can say, I know how to do this. You pay me $5,000, I'll do it for you. That's a contract. However, employees, that's why employees are interviewed. Contractors are usually not interviewed. Employees are interviewed because they don't want to hire someone who just knows stock solutions to 10 problems, right? If you know stock solutions to 10 problems, you're a contractor. However, when you are called upon to be interviewed for a job that's a permanent job, they will give you a problem, but they are not interested. Okay, this is something that people make a mistake here, and in assuming the wrong thing. Maybe they're interested in the solution, right? Whether you eventually arrive at the solution or not, right? But the bulk of their focus during the interview is not in whether you know the solution, is in whether they can find out how you think, right? It is how you think that is important to an employer, not whether you know the answer. Same thing with questing. Okay, I've realized it's questing. I didn't design it like that, but that's how it turned out to be. Whether you know the answer or not will not usually get you the answer, the trophies, but it is how you proceed through the track, saying, well, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, I'm going to try that. If you think through the problem, it'll guide you to the solution. And by the time you're done with all of the quests, subconsciously, I think your way of thinking would have changed because of the mini quests and the way you attack each of these problems. I think, right? I didn't do it like that, but students have told me it kind of seems to shepherd their mind into thinking about problems in a certain way. Or better way to put it is to stop them from thinking about problems in a certain way. Most people don't solve problems because they are thinking about the wrong way of solving it, right? And the thinking about the wrong way of solving it, all you need to do is just stop thinking about the wrong way and you'll find the right way to do it. And so yeah, you'll just develop the right way of thinking about problems. So it will be a mistake to say that at the end of CS2A, 2B, 2C, you'll know the solutions to all these problems, because I think we teach about 15, 20 algorithms altogether. Obviously, you can't teach all algorithms, right? So we teach about carefully selected 15 to 20 algorithms that are designed and staged at the appropriate levels to guide you through the process of thinking, so that if you solve this problem after that problem, this one extra skill that this problem needs, that problem didn't need, you'll get practice. And you'll also learn why this problem was the next logical problem to solve after that. Because if you're learning on your own, it's very hard because there's so many problems out there. You want to say, I want to learn this, I want to learn that, I want to learn these problems that these interviewers are learning. That is not the way to learn computer science. The way to learn computer science is to go through a structured sequence of problems that have been chosen by computer scientists, educators, to say that this is a sequence that will basically tell them the right way to think about the problem in going to the final solution. So if you do it systematically like this, you'll find that that is very helpful. Okay, so that's all I had. So those of you who joined late, please take a moment later on to watch the video and listen to the fluff. You can watch it at 2x speed, by the way. Okay, that's the advantage of YouTube, is that you can switch to 2x, and most of the time, I'm talking relatively slowly, I think. So you can switch it to 2x speed, and it won't be 1 hour, right? 30 minutes. You can just listen to it even. Although, don't listen to it, watch it, because there's so many nice faces here. So you should watch the video and 2x speed, it'll be nice. And please do come, with some interesting ideas in your mind already for the next class. I can even have more frequent classes if you guys want. Okay, I don't have any problems, as long as it doesn't conflict with my 2B, which also I'm and some student projects that I'm advising. The projects that I'm advising are not fixed hours. They're just Zoom sessions on demand. So if you come up with a time that you say we want an additional Zoom class, I can always say to my other students, pick a different time. Okay. Whereas 2A and 2B, we can keep the fixed times so that it's easier for you guys, and we can do all that. So today, try and keep the discussion. You don't have to. Try and keep it to data representation. Talk about data representation issues. You can also talk about Hello World and the first program and so on and so forth. That's perfectly fine. Don't share any of the Quest code, but you are welcome to share the very first Quest, because the password for the first Quest is in the syllabus itself. So first Quest, you can share the code, and also going to the website, you can share your screen, going to the website, dropping the file, because some students may not be aware. You can do all that. But from Quest 2 onwards, no sharing of the code itself. But you can use this class, data representation and Quest 1. All right. So do you guys have any questions for me? Oh, and by the way, Kyle, I mentioned this to, who was that before? Maitri. Yeah, I mentioned this to Maitri. I don't read the chat. I think many students also don't read the chat, because what you type in chat comes like a bubble on my screen and disappears, because I don't have the chat window showing all the time. I don't have enough real estate on my screen. So, but you should feel free to just put up your hand, or just say, just interrupt me. I don't believe in if someone interrupts me, I don't think they're rude. Okay, lots of people think that interrupting people when they're talking is rude. Right? Let me set the record straight right now. Okay, I could be talking to you about the most important theory on earth that nobody ever knows. Okay, I could be in the midst of the conversation, and it could be the most important thing to the whole world. And if you just say, hey, hang on just a sec, I have a question. Okay, that is not an interruption at all. Okay, I am not offended. I don't think it is rude. Feel free to interrupt me anytime. If I don't respond to your hands up, you should just talk and ask, and that'll be fine. Kyle, go ahead. Okay, don't.
Yeah, so can I just clarify, this weekly virtual check-in is going to be at 1 p.m. Friday or 2 p.m.? So
I think the vote was 1 p.m.
Okay,
right, Emily?
okay. I was just confused because some of the announcements said 2. So it's going to be 1 p.m. Friday.
It ended up being a
Yeah,
tie between 12 and 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, anytime between 12 and 2. Is that what the?
Well, it was a tie. The vote was a tie. And
Oh, I
so-
see. It was a tie between 12 and 2, not 1 and 2.
Yeah, so I just did a random number generator and got 2, and so that's what I announced. So I'm sorry to
you know
everyone
what?
who was,
I'm sorry, Emily.
I meant to.
I was going to reschedule it to your time, but I set it to 1 p.m.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Why don't I make it?
Sorry.
Can we make it 2 p.m.? Do you guys want to make it 2 p.m.? I can make it 2 p.m. if you want, or if you're happy with this time, that's fine too. Just raise your hand if this time is okay. Otherwise, we'll do 2 p.m. Unfortunately, the people who think it's 2 p.m. haven't shown up here, so we don't know. They may be saying, no, I can't raise my hand because I'm not even there, right? So the 2 p.m. preference is out. Can someone take on the onerous task of checking again to between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. and we'll just make it that time from next week onwards. Yeah, check with the other students, and I'm happy to change it. Okay, and I'll make sure to set the right time in the announcements next week. Thanks. And thanks for showing up. Okay, thanks for showing up. And I think it is going to be a hugely interesting class, a useful class, and I think and I can already see that a whole bunch of you will actually be going forward into my 2B and 2C, even if you don't formally enroll in my 2B and 2C. I know a lot of students at UCSB, for example, enroll in this class because I think UCSB is also C++, and they get, at UCs, they give you credit for community college courses. And this one is only $250 or something like that, and there it's like $1,000, right? And even Stanford and other places, right? A lot more than UCs, right? And then they've done this for $250 too. So it's really cheap. So I know that a lot of students do these classes. Where was I going with that? So yeah, if you think that, where I was going with that was that you don't formally have to do these classes. If, for example, you did 2A and that it satisfied the prerequisite for the 2B equivalent at a UC. And so you said, okay, well, I've done my 2A for $250. I'll do my 2B at this other college. Fine, but that shouldn't stop you from not doing green quests. So I'm saying that even if you do the 2B and 2C equivalent elsewhere, you should just feel free to keep plowing on and complete all of the 27 quests, okay? And I can guarantee that there will be useful things, not just what you learn, but there will be cool things that I will post in these forums. Sometimes cash prices, projects, Oculus, things like that, right? I'll just give away for promising students or things, people that do interesting things, right? I have given stuff away in the past. So you'll find it interesting and useful, whether you're doing a class or not, to just informally keep questing all the way through. And so I highly encourage you to do that. Okay, so from next week onwards, I'll try and keep my spiel to the absolute minimum. And because all of you will join sooner in the first 5 minutes, let's say that after the first 5 minutes, it's just going to be free-form conversation amongst you guys. And you can also, if some bunch of you want to work on something and the others want to work on something else, you can decide who wants to go first. I prefer that rather than saying, we're going to create breakout rooms and this bunch goes into that breakout room and this bunch goes into that. Yeah, I don't like that, okay? Because you don't get visibility into what each other is doing. So I would prefer that if you have multiple groups of people, let's say one of you wants to find out something to do with arrays and find out how to treat arrays. Someone else wants to find out, well, I'm more interested in how to, I don't know, shuffle numbers in an array or something like that, right? Different things. You could say, well, you know what? I want to do this too. Why don't you go first, right? And I'll follow what you do. And then after you're done, hand over to me and I'll do it. So ideally, that'll be better, right? Then we'll have 3 or 4 different demos. Not demos, really. 3 or 4 different discussions, interesting discussions happen in one day. And obviously, we're not time bound here. So we can keep it going as long as you guys are going, right? Until the last person drops off the meeting, I don't have to stop the recording. I can keep going, and we'll have all of that captured for you to refer to later on. Okay, and please do watch the previous videos from previous quarters because those have interesting projects. Every class, almost every class, we're working on something interesting. Students are working on something interesting where I'm watching. Okay, and you can say, hey, you know what? In spring 21, the student did something really interesting. Can we do that again? And we can do that in class. All right, we can do that in our class. And so watch videos and pick out interesting things. Doesn't even have to be our class. Okay, you can say go on YouTube. So many people doing interesting things on YouTube, right? So you can say, hey, on YouTube, I watched this person implement this really cool algorithm or do this thing. Can we do this in our class? Fantastic. Okay, so that's something that we've never done before, hopefully, right? We can do that in our class. We can say, hey, we'll take that YouTube problem and try to solve it in class. And we can do that too. As long as, the challenge is really finding problems that are that only use the skills that everybody's learned up to that date. That is a challenge for 2A and 2B. 2C is not so hard, okay? The 2C, because most of the students know a lot of things, it's more easy to find problems out there and say, let's do that. Whereas in 2A, it's more challenging. It's harder because, go and find, even if I go online and search for interesting C++ programming problems for beginners, right? I said beginner problems, even then, I find many of those problems are not a good match for the things we cover, right? So they may need something that we won't cover for a couple more lectures and things like that. So our classes will be useful from that perspective. Is that okay? Are you guys happy that you enrolled in 2A, or you say, oh, I got to do this in 5 weeks and then move on? That's the wrong attitude. All right. So say, I only have 5 weeks to eat all of this incredible buffet in front of me. Okay. That is the right attitude. So please do that. I will do everything in my power to make this fun and interesting and useful for you. Okay. Because if it's not fun and interesting and useful for you, it's not fun and interesting and useful for me. And I don't have to do anything that's not fun and not interesting and not useful for me, right? I'm at a stage where I can only do fun things, I think, right? So that's why I want it to be fun for you. If it's fun for you, it'll be fun for me too. Yeah. All right, thank you. Anytime you want me to answer any question, or you have a question that none of your classmates have an answer for, just call me, okay? I'm just going to be here until I close the conversation. I'm going to turn the laptop around so it's looking out into the yard, so I'm not in your face. You guys can have a conversation just as though you are in a STEM center or some breakout room of your own. It is being recorded, and if you need to ask me anything, just call me, okay? I'll be there and I'll come back and talk to you. Is that okay?
Before you go,
yeah.
What like text editor or code editor would you perhaps recommend, and where would you recommend we actually try running the code?
Right. Okay. So it's personal choice. If you have a Mac, do you have a Mac or a PC?
I'm on PC.
Okay. For both Mac and PC, really, many people are using VS Code. At PC, I think investing a little bit of time in learning VS Code now will pay off big time in the future. Now, VS Code is one of the easy editors to learn. It doesn't take a lot of time to install it, or even Windows 10 or 11.
Well, I actually do happen to have VS Code, so
oh, yeah,
I just haven't used it. I haven't used it much. I have it downloaded. But
yeah. Use VS Code. I think it will be useful. You don't need VS Code for the first 5 quests. The first 5 quests you can just do with Notepad, because it's just one program that big. Yeah. So first 5 quests you just type like that. Oh, actually no, because you're students, you may have to run it and see the result and all. So yeah. So if VS Code is good. Use VS Code.
I'll use VS Code.
If you're on a Mac, those of you who are on a Mac, use Xcode for now. Okay. You're also free to download and install VS Code. That way, your experience will be unchanged. If you ever have to move to a Windows machine, you'll have the same experience. But I use Xcode on a Mac. But I did get familiar with VS Code for a little while, because I was working with my son on a project and he was using VS Code, and so in order to follow his code, I had to pick up some VS Code. But I saw that in that process, it was actually very powerful and nice editor, right? And in fact, when we're editing HTML and CSS, it would automatically color and everything, and you have a preview of the HTML page right there in your VS Code window with colors and everything. Everything is very nice and user-friendly. So I'm only using Xcode on a Mac because I'm just used to it and it just comes without thinking. But Xcode is really powerful. Xcode is powerful and useful. Once you get used to using Xcode on a Mac, it's a very simple, very small step for you to start developing iOS applications also on a phone, right? Phone applications, because for developing mobile applications, you just need to use Swift, which is a slightly different language from C++. Once you know C++, every other language is a piece of cake, I think, because in C++ you have to do a lot of things which every other language just takes for granted. That is really the truth of it. The truth of all programming languages is that the one language in which you can do absolutely every single thing is assembler. Okay, machine code. Machine code, you can do everything you can think of. Parallel operations, concurrency, everything you can do in machine code. Okay. However, it's a little hard. So C++ was basically a superficial aspect of machine code. C++ is really machine code, really, because everything you can do in machine code, you can do in C++ also, right? So it is just one step removed from machine code, but looks more like human language. Now, once you get past C++, you have all these other languages: Python, Java, Erlang, Prolog, Lisp, all of these other languages, right? Each one of those is specialized for operation in a particular area. So if you take Java, for example, right? Java says, right, you can do everything you do in C++, except in C++, you got to take care of the memory also. In C++, it is down to the metal. You need to know every single bit you ask from the operating system, you need to give it back to the operating system. So you are really squeaky clean. A C++ programmer is a squeaky clean programmer. They leave nothing, they leave no trash behind them. And if you're a C, that is why a C++ programmer will also be a rock solid Java programmer, any other programmer too. Because in Java, it's just one step removed from C++ to say, well, you know what? In C++, you spend a lot of mental cycles tackling memory, right? Releasing and allocating stuff. And all of that is taking valuable human intelligence. So we're going to take that away and automate it for you. So in Java, you have this concept of a garbage collector, right? How many of you are Java programmers or programmed in Java before? A few people, right? Okay, so you have this garbage collector. You don't have to explicitly be involved in requesting memory and releasing it to the operating system. It's a pain, really, isn't it? And if you think about it, thinking about what we talked about before is the aim of humankind is to take as much of our intelligence as possible and make that non-intelligent so that we can put it into a machine. So that the machine does not require intelligence, right? So memory management is really a brain dead automatic task, which does not require human intelligence. So you can say, why do C++ programmers, waste so much cycles in trying to make sure that memory is handled in such an accurate way? So Java said, let's take that off the table, so that a Java programmer can focus on the more intelligent aspects of the problem being solved, not have to worry about memory management. Yes. So that's why in Java, you have the memory management taken out for you, and it's done by the garbage collector. However, anything that is automated is not always done in the best possible way. Yes, because once you've automated something, it's going to do the same thing for every single situation where that needs to be done. But there'll be lots of situations where you can't go straight, the road is straight, but you've got to go like that. Right? So there are little things that'll give you better results than if you did the straight way. But Java is always the straight way, because that straight way has been codified and is frozen. The memory collection and memory, that is part of the garbage collector. So that's why in Java, I've seen many of my Java programmers write programs and everything okay. No memory leaks and anything, right? Everything seems to be working fine. But in production, all of a sudden, one day at 1 p.m., the system grinds to a halt and freezes for 10 seconds and then comes back mysteriously alive again. Right? How many of you had that happen in Java programs? Right? It's running along, chugging along, and suddenly stops, for a few seconds, and that is when the garbage collector is kicking in, because in Java, people have the flexibility to program without knowing the details of how the memory is managed. More untrained programmers can get into Java than into C++. Yes. So in order to be programming in C++, you need to be properly trained. You need to have a computational mindset. You need to know exactly where things are coming from, where to give things back to. All of that is buttoned up and clean in C++. So you need to be really, really good to programming in C++. And the fact that this memory management is automatic and my human mind is being engaged in it will cease to matter, because you've done it so many times that your automatic system will take care of that. In the CS2C, for example, people are not worried about leaking memory that much. They can basically do it, look at the memory checker output and say, well, it's leaking memory, that's where it should happen, I'll go and fix it. Okay, they're not bothered so much about that. It's all part of, so they're still thinking 100% of their intellectual cycles are on the problem, not on memory management. But a Java programmer might think, well, a C++ programmer, they're thinking more about memory management. No, that's not really the case. But this C++ programmer, when they go on into Java, they'll be a much better Java programmer in many cases. Not always, because I know Java programmers also who don't know C++, who do a really stellar job. But unfortunately, because for Java and Python, you don't need to know proper computer science, basically kindergarten computer science, right? So people can write Java programs and Python programs, get them to do things, right? Inefficiently. It'll work. And people around them will say, hey, that person is really clever. They got something, the computer to do something for us, right? And that person could say, well, my growth mindset is now destroyed completely because someone told me I'm great, right? So that kind of thing has a greater chance of happening for Java programmers, not for C++ programmers. Because what happens is that in Java, people become sloppy. And because they don't need to know the details of computer science, they'll just say, well, in order to do this, I need these structures, right? Java gives me all these structures for free. So yeah, give me a hash table, give me a list, give me that, give me this, right? Give me this object. I'm going to make tons of these objects, do this thing, and then toss them away, right? And the job will get done, but at what cost? It's very inefficient, right? Whereas a C++ programmer would approach the same task, even though it's in Java, they'll say, well, in order to do this, I can do it with all of those things, but if I was doing it in C++, imagine how much work that would be to use all these things, right? To use a dictionary in Python, right? So if you're a Python programmer, people use dictionaries willy-nilly for even things that dictionaries should not be used for. They're not computer programmers. They just think people that learn to throw computer Python statements together and have it work miraculously, right? They're not real programmers. But so they're using dictionaries for things that should not be used. A dictionary should not be used for. Whereas a C++ programmer knows, hey, a dictionary is a hash table. It has a 25% to 50% overhead, right? Space overhead. So if that can be done using an array, it should be using an array, not a dictionary. So that will happen in 10 seconds instead of 10 hours, that job. But both of them had a working program. One of us is more efficient than the other. And but the problem is, a lot of people would look at this and say, Java is a bad language, and C++, Java is a bad language because it lets people write these inefficient programs, or C++ is a bad language because it forces people to do these things. No, languages are not good or bad, right? It's only people and the way that we use these things that is good and bad. So if a solidly trained C++ programmer writes a Java program, that will also be as solid as a program they wrote in C++. However, when you say, well, I don't need to know computer science, I can still be a programmer, then you use inefficient things to do things, right? Inefficient things to do your task, and it'll do the job, but it'll be done very badly. So we want to be engineers, where we say we want to use the least amount of resources to get the most amount of benefit, right? Not a caveman who says, I want to use as many rocks as possible, throw them all together so I create a little hole I can go and live in it, right? So it's a huge amount of rock, a mountain of rock for one person to live, right? And they're both living spaces, but an engineer would know how to use the least amount of the mountain to build the most efficient home. And that is where this will take you. So that is why I say, C++ is a good language to start learning if you want to be a real programmer, right? If you just want to throw things together and get things done, not really care about the efficiency, yeah, okay, then you can learn programming in Python, Java, and so on. Even then, if you go on to advanced studies in physics or chemistry or anything, astronomy, for example, where you have to do computational simulations of things, you'll find that the C++ lets you simulate these things much more effectively than Java, because you'll know what resources to allocate. You'll only go for the absolutely critically required things. Anything that does not require you'll do yourself because it's easier for you to do. So that is the power of C++, and it's a good choice, a fantastic choice that you guys have learned to decided to learn C++. Okay, so and thank you again. I should be taking every available opportunity to just dive into another spiel. All right, that's it from me. Okay, no other. If there are no other questions, you can just talk amongst yourself. Otherwise. Any other questions for me? I'll try to be.
I do have one question. So I'm pretty new to coding and software in general. So let's say I learned C++, right? Mm-hmm. Now there are a lot of other languages out there. So mm-hmm. I'm just curious as to when and why I would learn a lot of the other languages. Are they all applied to different things? Like maybe Python's for, I don't know, ML or.
No,
I hear Java's. Yeah. I hear Java's for web dev.
That's a very good question. Yeah, and thank you for asking that. So each language has its specialty. For example, if I were to design a language that is to be used for data communication, you can imagine a language that is used for writing data communication programs, right? Like WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a communication program, isn't it? But it's an app that simultaneously may be required to maintain 50,000 or 100,000 connections and talk to all of them simultaneously. Now, it is possible to implement WhatsApp in C++, but a lot of what you'll be doing in order to get that app done has already been done in the form of a library and integrated into a brand new language. Maybe I think that language is called Erlang or something like that. Right, I remember, right, from a previous company. Yeah, that language is suited for that. So when it comes to time to make a connection to another machine in Erlang, you might just say, give me that pipe. As opposed to in C++, you might say, give me a pipe. I need to make a handshake. I need to send these packets across, read the responses, find the acknowledgements, everything okay. I need to clean the pipe. Now the pipe is ready for use. Yes, you would do that in C++. But a language which is designed for data communication might make that a one statement or one, right? So and so each language has its own way of doing, like Prolog and Lisp and functional languages. They are designed to solve problems where the solution is basically just symbolic manipulation, where you just shuffle things around Lisp, right? And those kinds of operations can also be done in C++, but because they are the predominant operations here, they just became primitives in this language. So that's why I think, in my opinion, learn C++, because it gives you everything. Because I think everybody should learn machine code and assembler, but obviously that's not feasible because even it's a waste of time to learn assembler and C++, assembler and machine code, because there are so many out there. So I think everybody should learn C++, which is the next logical step from there. Once you learn C++, then go ahead and learn any language you want. You'll find that that language is used in this domain, and in this domain, these kinds of operations are very common, and therefore we have special constructs in this language for those operations. And then you'll learn to recognize that, and you learn that language faster because the vast majority of constructs between that language and C++ you already know. They're common. The only things that make that language distinct are the ones that are suited for that particular domain. That's like 10% of the use cases. So you only have to learn 10% to learn a new language if you already know C++. I don't, the 10 is a number I pulled out of the air, but you get what I mean, right? So yeah, absolutely. So it's a good choice. Python, machine learning and Python, lots of people make that connection now because there's a lot of libraries out there. No, right? There are tons and tons of libraries, math libraries in Python. And ironically, those libraries are all written in C++, right? People write the libraries in C++ and then integrate them in Python. So in Python, you can make a one-line call. But that one-line call is hooking into the C++ library in NumPy, for example, right? And it executes C++ code. And that needs to be optimal and efficient, because when you're doing that heavy number crunching, you can't afford to do the looseness of Python with lots of data structures just dynamically coming and going and relying on the garbage collector. Yeah. So we learn to recognize all of that. There are tons and tons of machine learning libraries even in C++, right? But in Python, it's easier because it's a scripting language. Scripting languages are usually easier than compile languages because it's one critical step removed. You write the program and you can run it immediately. Whereas in compile languages, you got to write the program and then give it to another program called the compiler. Compiler itself is a program that someone wrote, right? You take the program that you wrote, give it to that other program called the compiler, and the compiler will read your program and turn that into ones and zeros, which is machine code. Technically, you could have written the ones and zeros yourself because it's machine code and it's just logic. You'd have written it, but you don't know machine code. That's why you're writing it in C++ and telling this other program to convert it into machine code for you. That's all. Does that make sense? Great. Any other questions? Was this useful at all? Was this useful? What time is it now? Oh my gosh, it's like 30. What is it? An hour and a half since we started? I can't believe I've been talking that long. All right. Okay. I shouldn't take up any more of your time. You guys should just feel free to talk amongst yourself and call me. Okay. And we'll meet again next week, same time, unless you guys organize another session before. All right. Best of luck in this class, and I hope to see all of you at the finish line. Go on and talk, and just no silence, okay? If there's silence, I'll have to come back and check if everybody's gone. So just keep talking. Anything, right? Doesn't have to be about C++. As long as there's noise on the line, I'm happy.
So no, Jared, go ahead.
All right, cool. So for the scientific notation for data representation, isn't there multiple ways to represent one number? For example, you can bit shift the first 5 digits to the left by 1, decrease the exponent by 1. something like that.
Yes, although I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I assume there's a limit on how you can do that because the exponent's only represented in 3 bits, right?
Yeah, but like for
So
example,
so there's probably a limit on how much you can, on how many representations there are, but I think there are multiple representations for a number,
Right.
if that makes sense. Yeah.
wait, so how do you know which one to put in an answer? For example, you can, for a representation of 1, for example, you can put like 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, or you can put like 2 times 2 to the negative 1.
Well, I don't know what is actually the most efficient, but you'd probably want to choose the lowest exponent, right? Because if the exponent's like 2 to the 0, right? Then obviously that's the easiest to see because let's say you have like, I don't know, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, right? So the exponent's 0. And it's very easy to see, oh, the number I'm working with is the first 5 digits, which is 0, 0, 0, 1, 1. Whereas if I represented the same thing with a different exponent, then you'd have to actually work out like 2 times. Let's see, what is it? You'd have to.
Wait, so sorry, go on.
You'd have to actually work out. Sorry, I'm being kind of vague because I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, and frankly, this is kind of new to me too, right? But I can't get the whiteboard. So
I think what Kyle is trying to say is that, for instance, like the number 4, you can say it as 2 to the second or just 4, but it's easier to say 4 because if you say 2 to the second, you have to use your brain to think about what 2 to the second represents.
yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say.
So
Right.
it's
So
using a
Right.
lower exponent makes it easier for you to calculate it, to turn it into an actual number, basically.
and
Okay.
I have to imagine that the computer, well, I don't actually know how efficient. I guess multiplying and dividing by 2 or multiplying by 2 to the power is just a bit shift. So I don't know the theory behind it or how efficient it actually is. But from a human perspective, it makes sense to me that I try to use a lower exponent.
Right. So like
That-
you will want the first 5 digits, well, like to represent like an odd number. So
well, you want to make the last, so you have 8 bits, and then you would want to make the last 3 bits
the exponent,
as
right.
small of an exponent as you can,
Right. Well, still having an integer. Well, still have.
while
like,
still fitting
yeah.
the rest of the stuff into the first 5 digits, right? Like
Right.
if you're trying to represent a really big number, then your exponent is going to have to be big,
Hmm.
right? Like let's say we want to represent I don't know, what's a really big number that it's kind of easy to.
Then by your logic, it will be more logical to represent 7 as like 14 times 2 to the negative 1.
No, because oh sorry, by low exponent I mean 0 being the best you could do.
I see. Okay.
So like the absolute value of
Yeah.
of
Okay,
the
that makes sense.
exponent, if that, yeah. Again, I don't know what the precise answer to the question is if you're thinking in terms of like the computer's efficiency, because I'm not aware of how efficient it is for the computer to multiply by 2 to a power versus just having a number like, I don't know, 16 hard coded in there.
I see.
Maybe that's a question for the professor at some other point.
If we're talking about accuracy though, because we're talking about floating point, right? So this could be a number with a lot of digits. Bit shifting would lose accuracy, right? Because that would actually make it less accurate. If we had a number with like a long representation and we start shifting it, we would actually like lose accuracy on that number.
Well, then it would be the wrong number. Yeah. No, we're just saying numbers that could fit within the space we have. Does that
Okay.
make sense, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if it were like I don't know, 64,000, then yeah, we probably wouldn't be able to bit shift in the way that Jerry suggested. But if it's like 4, then we could represent that as like 2 times 2 to the 1, or we could just represent it as 4, which would be 100 or I guess 2, 3.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for that, you
Right.
could just look at it in a decimal way and just, use math skills to figure out every single
Yeah.
representation that works within your bit limitation of like however many bits is for the exponent, however many bits is for the mantissa.
Yeah.
Wait, so for like a number like for example, okay, let's just say for a number like 8, would you represent it as 8 times, well, would you represent it as 8 times 2 to the 0 or like 2 to the 3 or something like that? Or just 2 to the 3? Because both of those are pretty simple. So like would you represent it as like 0, 0, 1, 0, wait, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, or you would represent it as 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, or you could represent it as that.
Aren't they just both equally valid?
Yeah, I'm just saying because there's like for the quizzes, like you're supposed, is there like multiple different answers for the quizzes or is only one answer correct?
Oh, I think there was one. Wait, am I allowed to talk about the quiz? It's done, right?
Oh, okay, well,
I don't think it's done. I
It's
think.
due on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me go ahead and not talk about the quiz then. Okay.
but yeah, like, is there like one representation that is just correct or like better than the others, or are all of them like equally valid?
Well, okay, so both of your numbers are 8, right?
Yeah.
If I had to, or I'm just speculating, it's possible that one is more efficient for the computer, but I don't know the answer. I think we should probably ask the professor at some point, but we can leave that aside.
All right. Wait, there was someone else that wanted to talk before. Wait, was there another person that wanted to talk before?
Did anyone run into, or does anyone have any like interesting problems they ran into, or just general questions about data representation, or any interesting activities the class can do here?
I had a question about data representation. So the packet was talking about differentiating between a negative and a positive binary number by
Yes.
by looking at the MSB or the leftmost number, whether it's 0 or 1.
Yes.
But how do we know when it's actually just part of the like binary number where you need to like when you want to convert it rather than seeing if it's like a positive?
Okay, so I think I was like halfway through the quiz when I actually like it clicked. So I think when something's written in the, there are two ways you can do it. Okay. So one is, let's say I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Right. So one way I can do it is the one in the front acts as a negative. If that were a 0, it would be positive, right? So in the 8 bits I just wrote, that is -1. Right. So that's like the very bad way to do it. And then I think the packet introduced this thing called the 2-second complement. Someone confirmed that.
2's complement.
2's complement? 2's complement. Okay. So if something's written in the 2's complement, then let's say we have 8 bits and we want to represent -1. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take +1. Right. And then we're going to take the 1's complement of this, which means we're just going to flop all the 1s and 0s. So, and then, well, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is correct. And then you add 1. I don't believe I have access to the whiteboard.
If you click share screen.
Okay, thank you. So let's see. So we started with 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. This is a byte, 8 bits. So that's +1 in 2's complement. And then if you flop all the ones and zeros. So zeros become ones become zeros. Then this is the ones complement, I believe. And then you add one. So, well, I guess you add one. And then what you get is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What you'll get is that. And that is actually -1 written in the form of 2's complement. It's a little bit weird. But does that look right? Can someone like confirm? Because this is new to me too. So if something looks wrong, let me know.
Yeah. I think the number end is negative. Instead of adding to 0 and 2's complement, it adds to like the power of 2 that's like 1 bigger than the number of bytes. So like in this case, it would add to 2 to the 9. And yeah, that would be the answer. Just all ones.
Okay, so this is -1 in 2's complement, right? And 2's complement's like a form of data representation. It's just like a name for the way we're representing this. This is +1, and then this is the ones complement. So does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does. They just
Kind of,
cleared up
okay.
what it was saying in the packet. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was confused when I saw it at first too. Again, and I was like halfway through the quiz when I was like, oh, that's what's going on. Right. And then you can actually tell whether a number is positive or negative. If there's a 1 at the front, it's negative. If there's a 0 at the front, it's positive. And when it's written in the form of 2's complement.
One trick for 2's complement is you can look at the leftmost bit, and what is that, 128? You could just to solve it out really quickly, like if you have a binary number in 2's complement and you want to get like the decimal value, what you could do is you could take the leftmost bit and just convert it. So this is what, -128. And then if you add every single of the values of the bits to the right. So I just did it really quickly. So -128 plus 2 to the 6 plus 2 to the 5th plus 2 to the 4th, all the way to 2 to the 0, you get 1. So that's a shortcut to solve it out.
Oh, really? Okay, hold on.
Wait,
so you take the left.
Oh, wait, can I speak for a second? So you take the leftmost number and then you subtract it by the rest of the numbers there. Is that what you're trying to say?
Sure, but in this case, it's negative because 2's complement, the leftmost bit is still technically like a signed bit, right? Because like if it's a 1, you know it's a negative number, I think. So in this case, it would be like -128 plus 2 to the 6 plus 2 to the 5th plus 2 to the 4th. I have that on my calculator. I can't screen share I can't screen share my calculator, but if you guys do it, it works. So it would just be like -128 plus 2 to the 6 plus 2 to the 5th plus 2 to the 4th, all the way to 2 to the 0, and you should get 1. Sorry, -1. But yeah, this should work for just 2's complement in general.
Okay.
Yeah, I think something that the packet that he gave us didn't really clarify. Like he clarified how to like a shortcut to convert between like a positive and negative number. But I don't think he actually, or maybe I just misread it and skipped over it. But the most significant bit is the negative number. So like the biggest bit represents a negative number, so that the rest of them can add to that negative number to represent both positive and negative numbers, if that makes sense. Like that's what 2's complement is used for. So everything is just like normal binary, where like starting from the right, it represents 2 to the 0, 2 to the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and then the biggest one represents -2 to the 7th. So then that's how, I think that's what Kyle was trying to talk about too, like how you can confirm it by just plugging in the values that we would kind of do for normal binary. But then what Anand taught us was how to converse, like by flipping all of them and then adding 1.
All right, so does that look right, Kyle?
Yeah. No, because it 128.
Oh, because this is a 2 to the 6.
Yeah.
2 to the 6. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, and -128 is
2 to the 7.
2 to the 7, right?
And since the most significant, it's -2 to the 7.
Okay. Oh, did anyone check, or does anyone know if like addition and subtraction work as you'd expect it to in 2's complement? Is that a thing?
No, there's some rollovers for it. Yeah, if there's I don't think it like I don't think that it works exactly as it is without 2's complement. Like sometimes bits can roll over and it goes into negative numbers, stuff like that.
Should
mean-
we try it?
Well, the reason for 2's complement is so the ALU in the computer can subtract numbers easily. So
So
when
how
a
does it subtract?
So when a computer wants to subtract like 5 minus 2, it's gonna put that 2 into 2's complement form and then add 5
Oh, and then add.
plus the
Yeah.
2's complement.
Oh, you can add, you
that's-
can always add and it works.
That's
Yeah.
the point of 2's complement.
Okay, okay. Yeah, somehow I missed that. So-
There is like a risk of like, for example, like 64 plus 65 being like negative 127 or something like that, I think.
Is there?
So like basically it takes 2's complement takes advantage of like wrapping, right? Because they're gonna shift off.
Yeah.
It takes advantage of wrapping, and that's how you're able to subtract easily by
So 7,
adding.
7, 6. So that's 64, right?
And then just add it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
then
that looks like 64 and then 65, you said?
yeah. Just, just
Okay,
add like
so
a
hold
one,
on.
just like add one to the end. Wait,
Okay, so if we add these, what happens? We get
1 0 something all the way to
plus. So we get 1 at the end
and 1 at the beginning and 0 I
and
believe.
1 at the beginning.
And yeah, and 1 at the beginning because you have to carry over from the 2 ones together. Right. So you get that, which is negative 128,
Which is, oh, but that
Negative
would be like
128.
129.
which is like negative 127, I think. So
Wait, in 2's complement,
that would be negative 127.
negative 127. Right. Right, because it's negative 128 plus 1. Right, or it's negative 2 to the 7th plus 2 to the 0.
Yeah.
Okay.
So addition doesn't always like work. Sometimes it might wrap around if it's too big, but yeah, for small numbers it does work exactly like it does. Or everywhere else.
Okay. All right, I'll stop sharing that. Does anyone else have any inquiries or challenge problems or anything interesting?
One thing to note, in Xcode, when you include IOStream, it also includes like limits.h. So then I basically, for one of my programs, I was taking advantage of that. And when I submitted it to, the website, they're using a different compiler. So you got to make sure when you're using something, you got to specifically include that. So you got to say like hashtag include whatever you're actually using. Like I was using like the limits.h, which is like automatically included in IOStream and in like the compiler that like Xcode uses, but in his compiler it doesn't include that, so it errored out. So I'm just trying to save you guys a wrong answer if you're using
Okay, that's actually really helpful. Although I guess a lot of us will probably be using VS Code.
Yeah, so I don't know the case for VS Code, but I think just include everything explicitly if you're using it, even if like some other, like IOStream includes a bunch of stuff. But I think you should include it specifically in case it doesn't work.
Okay. Cool. Kind of a newbie question. Where do you actually like go and run your code? Like,
in the terminal. It depends
the
on like,
terminal.
yeah, so do you have your compiler installed?
I do not.
Okay, so
I don't
there's
believe I
this,
do.
okay, so there's this compiler called MingGW. which I find, which I use for
Okay.
Windows. I'm gonna put that in chat. If you find that and you go to the SourceForge website, I'm gonna try and finding it. Or you can go to their website itself.
Okay. That's very helpful. I'll go check that out.
So I put the website. Yeah, if you have an IDE, it runs in its own environment. But if you're using VS Code, you have to install a compiler for it. So just go to the downloads page and download it for your operating system and complete the steps for it.
Okay. Okay. Another newbie question. Oh, what does slash mean? I don't know the answer.
Double slash means comment, but single slash means either divide if you're doing an operation.
No, I'm
Wait, like on the
on the questing site, like a lot of times when I submit stuff, you know how there's like the absolute value sign and then the
the vertical slash, that means like
Yeah.
your output like differed from like the supposed output.
Okay, thanks.
Wait, hold on. So on the questing site, vertical bar means output differed,
Yeah,
and forward slash means what?
there's no forward slash. I was just like saying something about like forward slash meaning divide, like in C++ code.
Yeah, in general, I think it just means there's something wrong with your output compared to what is expected.
Yeah,
But I think the like absolute value, the vertical thing means it's different from the what's expected. And
yeah.
then the less than or equal to like bracket things, that just means
Oh.
there's like an extra thing in your code.
Oh,
You have that
Vincent's
extra-
got our back.
You have like an extra new line, or
Yeah, like an extra new line. Yeah.
it's either like an extra new line or like doesn't have a new line. Each of the like one of those is the greater than sign, one of them is the smaller than like sign, but like I can't remember which is which. So
Oh, another newbie question. Does anyone here actually know like what an IDE is? Like I've heard the term used. I've used like the Arduino IDE. I don't know what it is though.
It stands for Integrated Development Environment. It's basically a place. It's sort of like a text editor, but it has everything installed for you in like one sort of like program. So if you were to run code, it would just compile and show you the code automatically, rather
I
than you
see.
have yeah.
Okay.
So it's a bit more beginner friendly than if you were to use a text editor, but I'm assuming that VS Code might also do the trick as well if you use stuff like Code Runner and things like that.
Okay. Okay. And Code Runner is an extension that what lets you run the code?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Okay.
Xcode is like an IDE because you can run it, you don't have to go to the terminal to run it, I'm pretty sure. So
This is kind of just a tip, but I've noticed in some of the like quests farther down the line, when you have to do looping, actually this might be getting a little okay. Usually when you're doing looping like in a for loop, you always have to have a condition in there. When you're comparing like let's say two numbers in that condition, you just try to make it like the same type of same data type. Like try to just compare integers and integers and not integers and like a double, because then sometimes I think sometimes the questing site throws an error and it just won't compile for you, so it won't even check your code. So
oh yeah, one thing related to that, make sure, at least in my case, his compiler was very picky about the sign, whether you're making an unsigned and signed comparison or a signed. I mean, like if they don't match up, he's gonna throw an error, and my compiler didn't. So just you got to be very specific on your loops, including signs and data types, of course.
All right, well, everyone's gone silent. So is there anything else before we wrap up for today? Yes, that's a no. All right, well, I'll go ahead and drop off the call. It was nice meeting you all. And,
Wait, are we just allowed to do that after? Or
I'm sorry?
wait, do we have to like tell the
Oh, no,
Yes.
he'll just assume that like when everyone leaves, then it's over.
Oh, okay.
This is just kind of from what I understood, we're just supposed to remain in the call for as long as we have something to talk about. Otherwise we just drop out.
I see.
Yeah, well, I'll see you all next week.
All right. Thank you.
I had one question, Professor Anand.
Hey, yeah. Just give me a sec, okay? All right. Satyam, yeah, tell me what's up.
Hi, yeah, it's the same problem I kind of emailed you about. So I think that
You emailed me?
it looks I emailed you about I'm the one who said I'm traveling to India this summer.
Oh, you emailed me saying you're dropping 2B in the summer?
No, I'm traveling to India this summer.
Oh yeah. I thought I replied to that. You're
You
good.
did.
You're
Yeah, I'm good. I just wanted to say, like, if I think they're deciding on 2 p.m. for the class time, it might be a bit difficult for me because it's
yeah,
2:30
it's 2 a.m. in India. How long are you?
Yeah.
How many weeks are you going to be in India?
So I'll be flying July 15th and then be there.
Yeah. Oh, I see. You're not back until the end of class after that. Hey, I can't hear you. Hey, Satyam, your audio went off.
Hello.
Yeah, now I can hear you. So yeah, I see. You're going to be there until the end of the quarter after that.
Yeah. So
It's okay. But participate in the video until then, and then after you go to India, just participate in the subreddit.
okay, sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're good. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. No worries. See you later. Bye.